Welcome back, guys, to the Medalist Sports Card Podcast, Episode 3. I'm your host, Clayton. I appreciate everybody's support on the first two episodes. On this episode, please leave that like below, leave a rating below if you're listening to it on Apple Podcasts or Spotify Podcasts. I really appreciate it. Subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. Leave a comment. Ask me questions. Leave critiques. I love it all. Head on over to Instagram, medalist_sportscards. Leave a DM, things you want to talk about. Anything you guys want to chat, hit me up. Always open for that. But for now, let's get into episode 3. All right, guys, I am back from Dallas. What a weekend it was. Flew out Thursday morning early, got in Thursday afternoon. As many of you know, I am a professional athlete, so I was doing some training while I was there as well. So I had to train on Thursday, Friday morning before the shows. Got to dealer night on Thursday. What a weekend. Friday, Saturday, go, 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 go. Came back Sunday morning, and have been busy since then with training. So finally getting around to record this podcast now on Wednesday. Obviously was hoping to get it out on Tuesday, but things happen. But in this podcast, we're going to go over the hobby news for the week. Some things went down. Let's talk about Dallas, obviously. Like I just kind of gave a little intro about Dallas. Let's talk a little bit about the NBA. Second half of the season has started. All-Star game is wrapped in the books. We've started the second half of the season. 36 games left for most teams headed into the playoffs. Talk a little bit about kind of my part one of players to watch in the second half, players to potentially look at investment opportunities in going into the second half of the season into the playoffs. We'll talk about the first half of those players. And then I kind of just want to give a few updates about the podcast, about the channel, just about things going forward with Medalist Sports Cards. So without further ado, let's get into the hobby news for the week. The hobby hits. CSG, which I kind of talked about when we did the PSA update. CSG, new grading company on the block. They're a smaller company under Collectors Authenticity. They have brother sister companies like NGC, who is a top tier grading company in numismatics or coins. They grade currency, they grade comics, they now grade trading cards like Pokemon and Magic the Gathering with CGC. So they have this repertoire. They've hired away two of the best graders in the company or in the world. They use AI. This company has all of the makings to be great. So the first major sale was made of the first card graded, which was a 2003-2004 LeBron James Topps Chrome Refractor rookie card. It was graded CSG 9.5. So CSG is the exact same grading scale as Beckett, on the 9.5s being their gem mints, with the subgrades. Subgrades of the card were 9.5 on centering, 9.5 on edges, 10 on edges, 9.5 on corners, and 9.5 on surface. I believe so. If I'm wrong, I'm going to try to put the card up here. The card sold for $98,000, $98,100. This is the first card graded, first major sale. Card Ladder values the PSA 10 at $286 and the PSA 9 at $50. The BGS 9.5 at $125,000. So this sale kind of put it above the 9, below the 10, obviously by a lot, and then kind of below the 9.5 BGS. So there's been some talks about CSG. I've seen issues with the AI with vintage, saying cards are trim or altered. I've seen values of modern cards be pretty decent. So it'll be interesting to see how this is kind of accepted. Obviously, we don't really have a choice. We need to a lot of people are going to be moving away from PSA while some are staying with PSA. CSG might become a player in that, might not be. But it's just kind of interesting to see a big high dollar card, kind of their 9.5 kind of dropped it right in the middle of the bucket of prices. I would have probably liked it to be closer to the BGS price if I think it would be a major player right away. But at the same time, BGS for vintage cards, and I say vintage, older modern, these 2005 or earlier cards, BGS was the grading company for those at one point. So BGS does have some value when it comes to these late vintage, early modern cards, whatever the era you want to call it is. BGS with modern cards, these 2017 and newer, 2015 and newer, the BGS values aren't necessarily getting the top dollar as these older cards are. So then it comes down to my next point is just a second. My next point, it comes down to TopShot. I want to talk a little bit about TopShot. We never really talked about TopShot yet on this podcast. We'll talk a little bit about my opinions, kind of give you the rundown of TopShot. If you haven't, TopShot is an NBA NFT marketplace, non-fungible tokens. So digital, the easiest way to say is digital sports cards, but they're not sports cards. TopShot, go check it out, TopShot NBA. My basic opinion of it, I have no money invested in it. I have not put any money invested into it. I saw it very early on when I believe Tyler Hero posted about it, when it was kind of getting going on social media a little bit in like January. I saw it. I thought it was a cool idea. I think it still is a cool idea, but I don't see where I'm ever going to put money into it. I would rather put money into sports cards. I'd rather have the tangible asset of a sports cards. That's just me personally. I don't think it's cool to pull up my laptop and be like, I own this clip. When at the same time someone could watch it on YouTube and say they watched it on YouTube, but they don't own it. I don't see a value of me holding a clip like that, owning a clip. I think it is cooler now that the clips are more of the exciting versus just a pass or versus just a random shot in a random game. It is cool that they're integrating these social media highly popular clips into TopShot. I will say that. The other thing is the hype has slowed a little bit over the last couple weeks, last week or two. Like 2 or 3 weeks ago, I mean, it was all the talk of the world. People thought the sports card market was done, that TopShot was going to blow up. And hold on, the dog is... We're good. That the market of sports cards was going to collapse, going to fall, going to weaken because of TopShot. Don't think that's true. I think TopShot has found its place in the hobby. I think TopShot is TopShot. Sports cards are sports cards. You can invest in both. You can split your assets in both. I think that does, I don't know, make it tough for somebody to pick. But at the same time, TopShot's TopShot. Sports cards are sports cards. They are releasing a lot more packs. I think that's cool. But I also think that that's going to slow the values of some of these non-major players' clips, random players that have clips have just blown up for no reason because they're just releasing so many more clips and so many more avenues for you to own a player. I think the value of some players are going to go down. Next point, Goldin Auctions is still going. Goldin Auctions is taken off. Their monthly auction is currently posted. Some of the highlights include that I saw in there with 2 PSA 10 Fleer Jordans. They're already at 350K plus. The coolest card that I thought was on there is, again, kind of going back to the Kobe train, is the 1-of-1 2019-2020 Kobe Nebula BGS 9.5. I think that's a really cool card. I think it has I think it's just a neat looking card aesthetic wise. Obviously, with it being 2019-2020, it's kind of got a special place as the release of after Kobe's death. I mean, I think it has a special place, it being the 1-of-1 Nebula, and just the aesthetic of the card in that holder is special. It's at 66K last time I checked. It could be more. I have no idea what it could bring. I'd say over 100. It might even bring close to 152. I don't know. We'll check in when that closes and kind of give like a circle back on that card. But that's something I wanted to highlight. There's also an unboxing that Ken Goldin did. There's things like the MJ Exquisite Auto that are in there, Lebron Rookie Exquisite Auto, an Acuna Rookie Refractor Auto, and then the coolest card I thought was in there is, I'm not even much of a vintage person, but the Jackie Robinson 1948 Leaf Rookie PSA 6. I have no idea what that card's going to bring. I think it's cool. I need to learn that market a little bit more, but I'm excited to kind of see where Goldin Auctions goes over the next months, 6 months, 8 months, as the hobby continues to grow, as these high-end cards continue to be brought out and sold. How many high-end cards are there? Like, there's only 2 BGS Pristine Black Label Kobe Refractors. Once someone buys those right now, I don't see those coming back out for sale. So it's just going to be one after another of these ones of ones coming out, but there's only a certain amount of one of ones. So it'll be cool to see where Ken Goldin kind of goes with this. But it's an exciting time for high-end cards in the market, and Ken Goldin is capitalizing on it and really, I think, bringing a lot of attention to the hobby, just because, like I said last week, with ESPN doing a push-all notification about the Kobe sale, I think it really shows that the sports industry cares about sports cards. So, final point I have in the hobby hits section is the overall market update. I kind of use Card Genie for this. I think you have to really dig in a slightly more than what Card Genie puts out to you. I think the markets as a whole of a sport are very different than the interworkings of the individual sports itself. Graded cards, modern versus vintage, color versus base, playoff teams versus non-playoffs teams, young stars versus GOATs. I think there's different markets within that, but I like to use Card Genie as kind of a guide of like where the entire sports card industry is as a whole. So basketball over the last week or two has continued to kind of make its bounce back up. I think that is driven a lot by the modern market, kind of making it bounce, because GOATs aren't really taking off. Kobe PSA 9, Kobe rookies aren't really bouncing. Kobe and LeBron rookies aren't really taking off. Kobe or LeBron Topps Chromes have slowed down to 30K or less. I heard people picking him up for 27.5 in Dallas. Like, that card was close to 40K not that long ago. Last Dallas show was almost a $40,000 card. So things have slowed in the GOAT market, but the modern market has corrected itself and continue to kind of correct itself as we go into the playoffs. People want to invest in people they watch. They're watching NBA now. The All-Star game is over, and people care about the NBA playoffs. Baseball has slowed slightly. Baseball really took off going into spring training with the Topps flagship release a couple weeks ago. Baseball kind of made a little boom. It slowed slightly the last week or two, but I see baseball kind of making a quick bounce back as spring training starts to wrap up here and opening days are around the corner over the next couple weeks. I think baseball could make a nice bounce here. I think you can still get into baseball. I'll talk a little bit more about it. Again, I am no expert in baseball. I know the big names. I follow the market, but I'm not going to sit here and tell you to go put money into baseball. My baseball portfolio is a small slice of my pie chart of investments. But I can talk a little bit more about that in the Dallas recap. But baseball is something that I would keep an eye on and potentially look at. Even if you're just a basketball only guy, potentially learn the market. I think there's going to be opportunities in baseball this season. Football, obviously, in December, it took that dip. Going into the Super Bowl, it kind of bounced a little bit. Since the Super Bowl, it slowed slightly. It's kind of stayed even, but it's kind of taken a little dip. I think football as a look. I think everybody's kind of obviously shifted their attention back to the modern basketball, to the NBA playoffs. I think over the next couple weeks, I think you still got time to pick up NFL going into the season. You still got time to potentially pick up some cards to get graded this summer. If PSA is tough, obviously with 6-month returns on the regular submission, it's tough to potentially get it back before opening weekend, opening time of training camp. But there's other grading opportunities with SGC, CSG, HGA to get potentially some of those cards in and back before the hype of football season, which usually is around training camp, beginning of season, comes. Otherwise, go pick up these graded cards. These high-end quarterbacks are going to start coming out of grading. There wasn't many Joe Burrows graded at Dallas, but I see those graded Joe Burrows start to come onto the market a lot more over the next month or two as people start to get those cards back from PSA that they submitted when Prism released and didn't pay the express orders. Soccer is on an upward swing. It's been on an upward swing. Attention of soccer is huge. Attention to soccer. Dallas was there. Euro 2021 is going on this summer. World Cup next year. Hype is starting to build around the footy cards, around the soccer cards. Be on the lookout for that. Again, not an expert here. I love the game of soccer. I somewhat follow the market a little bit, but just keep an eye on soccer. It could be something to, again, diversify a small part of your portfolio and just kind of take that risk from all in basketball and football and baseball and kind of put it into a large market. So that's kind of it for hobby hits for this week. Again, some big sales with the CSG card. Goldin Auctions is bumping. TopShot slowed a little bit. I don't see it necessarily collapsing. I don't see it necessarily going away, but I do see. I didn't hear it at all at Dallas. I will say that. No one really talked about TopShot. I expected TopShot to be talked about amongst dealers and buyers a lot. Didn't really hear it much. And then, like I said, go download the Card Genie Pro app. Use it as kind of your basic market guide, but go dive into those markets specifically. If you're looking for basketball, look at the GOATs, look at the modern, look at the playoff teams versus non-playoff teams, this year's rookies versus 2017 rookies. Really dive into each individual market and see where things are. Let's get into it. The major topic of the show, Dallas. What a weekend. I keep saying that, but it was awesome. The crowds were awesome. The dealers were awesome. The selection of cards was amazing. From $250,000 cards down to the dollar boxes, there was selection. I loved being able to dig through boxes, look through showcases, make deals. I didn't end up selling anything. The stuff I took to sell, I'll talk a little bit about on the vlog video that come out soon. But the stuff that I took to sell, I wasn't necessarily in the need to move it. It was kind of one of those things where, like, if I found the right deal and needed to kind of sweeten it up a little bit with a card or two to kind of throw in as trade bait, I did. But I was getting good deals on the stuff that I wanted to buy. I set out a specific list. I'll talk about in my pickup video. I set out with a specific list of exact grades and cards I was looking for of certain players, and that really helped. And it allowed me to make right deals. I knew kind of a rough number of what I wanted to pay for the card versus what the card was worth. Some of the cards I was willing to pay extra on, some of them I wasn't. So that was really something that helped me and allowed me to buy good cards at good deals all weekend. So just to give you the kind of the summary, like I said, Thursday night was VIP trade dealer setup night. So you had to have a VIP pass to get in, 3 to 4 hours or whatever. The main room at Dallas was probably a third to a half full on Thursday night. There was a lot of dealers who were set up that only had out maybe their cases, like their travel cases, wasn't really putting in stuff in the glass showcases yet. Some people were fully set up, ready to go. There was wax dealers there that had full wax out. There was dealers there who had their dollar boxes out. Then there were some dealers who were just setting up through the night, and if they made sales, they made sales. So it was kind of a hit or miss of what you got, who you got. The cards that I did buy, I got really good deals on Thursday night. And I think there was deals to be made Thursday night, especially if you were potentially looking to get into not necessarily the super high-end cards, but I'd say when I say moderate to high-end, like 2K to 5K cards, those $2,000 to $5,000 cards, the ones that there's a big crowd looking for, Thursday night was probably a good night to kind of snag those up, get a good price for them, and the dealer could use that cash to rebuy over the weekend. Dealers were looking to move stuff at the right price point on Thursday night just so they had more cash for the weekend to buy. I did see one big sale. Investicard bought the out of 15 upper decked black gold dual auto of MJ and LeBron. I heard the deal going down, turned around, and saw Investicard making their video about it. I was actually able to look at the card in the showcase prior to him purchasing it. It was an awesome card. Great signatures. Go find Investicard on social media. There's a video on it. You can search it on eBay. It was listed on eBay at one point. It is a really cool card. It was really cool to kind of see that sale go down. So into Friday. Friday it started at around noon for VIPs. 2 o'clock or so, they opened the gates for the mass attendance, and it went until I think 8 o'clock on Friday. The vibe that I had from that was the crowd was not as big as what people kind of expected. It was similar to the January show, but I think a lot of people were just like, hey, like, Friday's a tough day with a lot of people at work. The local attendance was obviously going to be tougher with people at work until 5, 6. But that didn't change the fact that the attendance wasn't different. I think a lot of people said that the transaction volume was higher. There's a lot more buying and selling on Friday. There's a lot more interest in it. So the people who came were ready to play. The people who came didn't just walk around the show and enjoy the show. People who came there were ready to buy and sell. So for me, Friday was slow in the first half of the day. I didn't really do much early on. I was able to get some food and reset at the restaurant there, And in the evening, I really kind of like pushed it. I was able to make deals. I was buying. I was selling. Actually, excuse me, I wasn't selling. I was buying, trying to trade. I was really working hard in the evening, afternoon, and really made some good deals on Friday afternoon. Saturday was crazy. So Saturday opened at 9 a.m., I believe. And it was a consistent flow of people and a consistent growth of crowd the entire day up into the evening. I mean, there was always almost a line to get in. The front half of the show where those major kind of players are with their cards out and right in front of the door always had people around their showcases. The dollar boxes always had lines to get into and kind of check out. The major cards were getting looked at and taken pictures of. It was exciting on Saturday. The energy was high. The autograph lines were long. People were making deals. People were trading. People were buying. People in the lobby were recording stuff and making trades with other people at the show. It was exciting. For me, Saturday was kind of a long day. I really pushed hard in the morning. I got a few buys in the morning right off the rip. Walked straight to the back of the room where it was less crowded. Made 2 or 3 deals right off the gate. And some people who were trying to get some cash for the day, I actually ran into and was able to make some good deals, get some stuff under comps, well under comps, and get my day going of buying and get their day going of selling and getting some cash in their hands. So a couple people asked me about how COVID impacted the show. I would say COVID restrictions actually might have negatively affected the show. I think a lot of people would be like, oh, they should have positively. People know COVID. I think what it did is like a lot of local people didn't want to come. I heard some dealers who were local, some shops who were local who said that they had customers who weren't as interested in going because of the restrictions, because of the fact that masks weren't going to be required. People didn't feel comfortable going. And I get that. I wore my N95, the Amazon version, all weekend. I barely pulled it down. And I even got my first part of the vaccination before I left. And I still rarely ever took it off, especially inside of the major shows and around people. When I was sitting off to the side, I would take it off and breathe just like anybody would. But I think it didn't have a super negative impact, but I don't think it really had any kind of positive impact or a greater influx of people coming into the show just because there was less COVID restrictions. I think it was pretty, it didn't negatively affect it either way. I'd say a third to the half of the people had masks on. Wasn't anything crazy. There wasn't anybody fighting the standard. There was nobody enforcing it. It was kind of just a free-for-all, but at the same time, a lot of people had respect for it and still wore masks. And some of the dealers did, some of them didn't. It just kind of depended on, obviously, your beliefs of whatever. So my final kind of talks about the Dallas show are going to be kind of what the hot topics were, what people were talking about, what my best buys were. This is kind of where people who weren't there kind of want to know, like last time it was all about GOATs. This time the GOATs were there, but kind of in a different way. Autographs were the big talk, I felt like. Everybody kept talking about how undervalued autos were. Kobe autos, LeBron autos, KD autos, Steph autos. These big name players in the NBA space, people think that their cards are undervalued when it comes to their autographs. I think that was the big talk. The other talk was Kevin Durant, period. Kevin Durant, Chrome, you couldn't find it in a lot of showcases, and if it was in showcases priced right, it was gone right away. People were buying and selling a lot of KD. A lot of people were coming to the show trying to sell KD to people. There was a lot of KD being traded in the lobby. A lot of dual autos were a big thing. But Kevin Durant was probably the individual who was talked about the most and I would say traded the most. Some of the other players that kept coming up, Devin Booker, Damian Lillard, Kyrie, James Harden, some of these guys who were in contention for major playoff pushes were probably the most talked about NBA guys outside of Zion. I think a lot of people thought Zion was a buy for the weekend, including myself. But I don't think a lot of people, some people were buying base Zions. A lot of dealers were pricing them very fairly. A lot of people were pricing Ja Morant very fairly. These base cards were being priced reasonably. No one was really expecting people to pay a premium for base cards anymore. People expect you to pay under eBay comps at a show for base cards. Now, when it comes to color modern, people really want to get to comps. That was where I struggled with. My goal, as a lot of my goals going in, was modern color, especially Zion. And it was tough to get people off of comps. Some people would move off of them, but some people were like, hey, the last couple comps were 350, 350. Like, I'm at 350. And I'd be like, I'm not going to pay you exact comps. I'll pay you slightly close to comps. I understand that this guy's got room to grow. That's why I'm buying him. But I'm not going to give you 350 or more for this card. I'll give you 310, 325, 300. I was like, that's kind of just where I'm at with things. And some dealers would be reasonable, especially if you kind of got to know them, if you had a chat, if you were fair and polite, or if you potentially bought multiple cards, people were interested in making deals. Like I said, the two major players that I ended up picking up pretty decent cards for were Zion and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I picked up a lot of SGA on Saturday. Didn't pick up any on Friday. Didn't really go into the weekend planning to pick up my SGA, but I saw SGA's prices the shows being very fair and very reasonably under comps. And it's somebody that I have circled and had in the back of my head for a long time, and I like SGA as a player. But I thought the prices in Dallas were fair enough for me to want to pick up SGA while I was there. When it came to Zion, that was probably my best pickups of the weekend. I picked up a lot of color PSA 9s. And the reason I was picking up PSA 9s is some of the 10s have run just a little bit lately in the last couple of weeks. Not back up to where they were, but they've started to kind of make an uptick. But the 9s haven't necessarily upticked. So what I did is I kind of specifically went through and found some PSA 9s that haven't upticked yet with the 10s, or the ratio from the 10 to the 9s was too big for my liking. When I say that, 3 to 4, really X was kind of where I like to see a card or more before it really kind of tickles my fancy of making that purchase. So I went and did some research. Some of the cards I picked up, not going to spoil the whole video, Optic Hollows, Blue Velocities. I picked up multiples of these cards and a few other variations, because I like having the opportunity to sell multiple cards at different times. So I like being able to sell a card in a week, in 3 weeks, in a month, during the playoffs, after the playoffs, if he wins it all. I like being able to have multiple cards and being able to kind of diversify my selling points of the cards. So that's why I picked up two SGA Pink Ice 10s. It leaves me the opportunity to sell one now, one in a year. I picked up different. Keldon Johnson was one guy I had circled. I picked up a couple different Keldon Johnsons so that if one card went and one card didn't, if one card rises, if he sells now, whatever. It gives me opportunities to kind of go with it. So that's kind of my Dallas show summary. Again, what an awesome weekend. Stay tuned for a mini vlog. It was really hard to do it kind of by myself. A mini vlog and a pickups video. I'll talk more about this. Hoping to record that soon and get that up, and you guys can see even more of an insight, kind of the imagery of the Dallas show and the excitement that was in that room. So kind of the next topic I had to talk about was kind of NBA players to watch in the second half. I'm going to call this part 1. There's a few more players I want to talk about, but I'm going to talk about that on Tuesday. The players I wanted to focus on are players that potentially will have major news stories going into it, specifically on trades, going into the trade deadline on March 25th for the NBA. So kind of circle that in the back of your head. March 25th is the NBA deadline. Teams are starting to kind of look at where they are in the playoff picture, what pieces they're missing, and start to potentially make some moves going into the next week or so here as we head into the trade deadline. The two players that I have circled are two players who are rumored to be traded, but I also then highlighted players who are going to be beneficiaries of the trade, either on the team that the person's getting traded from or on the team that you're potentially getting traded to. The player that I first have circled is Victor Oladipo. As you know, he got traded a couple months ago now, in the James Harden trade to Houston. So he ended up there in that three-way trade with the Pacers. Oladipo is somebody they've been talked about trading. They've kind of decided potentially that he's somebody they don't want to build around long-term, the Houston Rockets organization. So he keeps getting talked about in trade rumors. He's getting brought up by beat writers. It's somebody who could potentially play into a playoff contender and help kind of push them over the edge. There hasn't been a lot of talk about where he would go. I think it's going to kind of depend on what Houston wants for him as far as where he may end up. Just to give you an example, though, his PSA 10 rookie 2013 Prism card is around $250. You can pick it up for. It had a low of around $140. like let's see, it had a low of like I think 140 in like February. And it's kind of made a bounce back. So that's something to consider. Is there still room to grow in this card? But I think there is. I think if he finds the right team, and the team potentially circles their offense around him, he's an exciting enough, explosive enough player to potentially get some serious attention going into the playoffs on the right team. But the person I kind of want to highlight from this trade would be Kevin Porter Jr. So Kevin Porter Jr., as you've probably seen, was blowing up the G League. He got picked up by Houston when in a trade with the Cavs earlier when he had some off the court troubles. But KPJ, I mean, he's already seen a pretty good boom in his prices in the last 2 or 3 weeks since he's got called up to the NBA. But I think there's still a lot of room, especially if they trade Victor Oladipo and John Wall is somebody who's injury prone and is injured now. KPJ is going to be the guard there, the go-to guy. He's put up great numbers, like 23 and 10 in the last game. He's somebody who's exciting to watch. His assists are exciting. He's a playmaker. He's a sharer. He makes the basketball court better for everybody around him. And he's just a dude who's got talent. And that could be somebody who if they think they can get his off the court life in check, that could be somebody that Houston builds around of. And the amount of attention that's going to be on him in Houston is going to be big after Victor Oladipo if he gets traded. So I like KPJ. KPJ in the last 2 or 3 weeks has seen a huge uptick in his PSA 10 base prism up to 180. But I do think there's still room in his color stuff. I keep bringing up color modern because people look at the base card, the base silver, the base prism first. And then after those cards make their run up, they move to the color cards, I think. That's kind of how the market works. But if you can get in front of that and start picking up some of the lower population cards that haven't seen that huge uptick yet with KPJ, there's going to be your biggest room to grow over the next couple months as the season wraps up versus potentially just his base. I still think his base has room to grow. This might be a star stock play even just because you don't know, say he goes off for another couple weeks here and has another 25 and 10 game after game after Victor Oladipo gets traded. You might just want to buy in now and dump the cards on star stock after you buy them. You don't need to really necessarily have to get them shipped to you. So look at KPJ, look at some of his stuff, do your own research on those two guys. Like I said, that's the first kind of trade example that I think benefits the player on the team that's getting traded from and the player getting traded itself. The next trade that I kind of looked into a little bit and think potentially could be some opportunity, this is very specific almost, is John Collins and John Collins getting traded to the Celtics. The Celtics are more of a, they don't really trade for big men. They haven't been known for that. But the Celtics could potentially pick up John Collins as their young big men to kind of hopefully put them over the edge and make them a contender in the East. I think that they need to. I think they're missing pieces when it comes to that. When you got guys like Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, you need a third piece. And I think John Collins could be that piece for them. John Collins is averaging like 21 and 12, I think, or 21 and 10. I think the Hawks are ready to kind of build around their young guards, and I don't think John Collins kind of fits that. John Collins' PSA 10 is down 40% since the middle of December, down to $115. I think that right there is a sign that the market's kind of staled out on John Collins. I know John Collins pre-season was somebody who had a lot of excitement around him going into the season and around the Hawks specifically. But imagine John Collins going to a team like the Celtics, who are a true contender in the East, versus the Hawks, who are just kind of like a, hey, we hope to make the playoffs kind of team. So that's kind of my play with John Collins itself. I think John Collins, if he ends up on any contender, not just the Celtics, he's a buy probably, I would say for sure. But my domino effect kind of play from that is if he goes to the Celtics is to look at guys like Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Both their cards have kind of staled out. Jaylen Brown made that huge run when he was playing at his all-star level in the first half of the season. He made a huge run up to his cards are over 500. They're hovering around 500, I think, for the PSA 10 Prism rookies from 2016. Jason Tatum's kind of been on a slight downturn the whole season on his PSA 10 rookies, all the way from down 17 to 20% from the middle of December down to around 640. So I think those two guys could be guys who could see bumps in their prices just because they bring on a contender to the Boston team that potentially could be the front runner if the Celtics kind of start to fizzle out. I don't think a lot of people have faith in the the Sixers kind of fizzle out. Don't have a lot of faith in the Sixers going forward. I think the Celtics probably could be the play in the East, especially if they pick up another guy to kind of complete that duo in their backcourt with Tatum and Brown. Somebody like Collins could really complete that, create a trio, create a triple-headed scoring threat that puts the Celtics at the front of the push in the Eastern Conference when it comes to the playoffs in a couple weeks. So, summary real quick: Victor Oladipo, KPJ, John Collins, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown. There's so many more on the trade rumor list. I think you go follow some beat writers, follow some forums, follow these teams, be aware of the players and implications if somebody gets traded. If the Blazers are potentially looking to pick up some big men, LaMarcus Aldridge has been talked about going to the Blazers. You could see a bump in LaMarcus Aldridge. You could see a bump in Blazers players. A lot of the Magic players are on the trading block. Their season's kind of a wash, and they're looking to get some players or something out of their expensive team. Aaron Gordon, Vucevic, I think is how you say it. Those guys are looking to be traded. Guys on the Bulls, Zach LaVine, Marketing, those guys could potentially go to contenders. But don't just look at the player getting traded is what I'm saying. Look at players around them, players who are being left on the team, players who they're going to. Example, Blake Griffin blew up, but I don't think Blake Griffin's going to be the highlight of the Nets going forward. I think it's going to be a guy like Kyrie and KD. If KD can't stay healthy, it's going to be a guy like Kyrie and James Harden. So Blake Griffin's presence on the Nets makes them better as a team, and I think that can be a huge boost to prices in guys like Kyrie and guys like James Harden. So we'll just wrap this show up for the week. I'm still gonna try to stick to the Tuesday Thursday schedule. Each week's going to be kind of different of which show's longer and which show's shorter. But hopefully trying to stay on the Tuesday, Thursday schedule. Worst case, it'll be one major show a week at the worst. I'm hoping to bring some guests on. If you guys have any suggestions on guests, on topics, on segments, on things you like can hear about, things you don't like hearing about, hit me over on Instagram, Medalist Sports Cards Medalist _ Sports Cards over on Instagram. Drop your DMs over there. Let me know kind of what you're thinking. I'd love to get some feedback. Leave a review below if you're listening to it, like I said, on Apple Podcasts or Spotify Podcast. And keep your eyes peeled for Tuesday. Hopefully dropping another podcast along with the Dallas vlog and pickup video will be coming sometime. Hopefully record that over the weekend. I appreciate you guys tuning in this week. I appreciate all the support so far on this podcast, on Instagram, on YouTube, on the Spotify and Apple versions. Appreciate you guys. Make sure to leave a like below, leave a rating below, share this with your friends, your colleagues, share it on Instagram. Love seeing the support, and I will see you guys back here on Tuesday. Have a great weekend. Go Blazers.